Hello, I would like to take the time to talk about something, and that is working with volunteer ensembles and volunteer choirs. While most of us in church music and organ performance, sacred music, would love the opportunity to work with a professional choir where we have courses that are all paid and things like that, the fact is many, if not most, church music positions, even at large churches, are the backbone of the ensembles, the choirs, the handbells, things like that, are volunteers. And I think that that is wonderful. Most of my experience has been the typical American church job, where you are working 10, maybe 12 hours per week, and you have 10 or 12 volunteers. And I think where the issue lies when working with volunteers is for church musicians, we so often find ourselves in positions where we have to question the commitment of the volunteers. It's one thing when you're working with 10 or 12 volunteers and they are all very dedicated. They are at least 3 rehearsals a month. They are there every Sunday on time when requested. And it's another thing if you consistently get told that, oh, we're going to be in Chicago next week because we have to go see the Bears play, or we'll be down at our house in Florida, our timeshare in Florida, for the next 3 weeks, so we won't be here. Or you find yourself in a position, especially even when some of the clergy people in the church question the dedication of the volunteers. A lot of times volunteer ensembles will sometimes abuse the volunteer status, and it's not fair to volunteers who are very dedicated. And if you're a very dedicated volunteer ensemble, and you also have someone that's very good to work with and someone who is flexible like myself, then volunteer ensembles can be very, very beautiful. Volunteer ensembles also have to understand that when they hire a musician, they're trusting the competence of the musician. A lot of times, it's one thing when you have volunteers who say, you're the musician that has had a lot of training. You've had 10, 12, 15 years of training in music. I don't have any training in music. I'm just a volunteer, and I know that I like singing. I trust you to teach me. That's one situation, but it's another thing when you find yourself in a situation to where a volunteer says that they've been singing for 30 years and they know better than the competent musician that you've trusted with the music program. Sometimes that can create a little angst in a relationship. So when it comes to volunteer choirs and volunteer ensembles, like I said, most of us will be working all of our lives with all volunteer or mostly volunteer ensembles, and at times we will be able to work with professionals, and that's fantastic. But working with volunteers, I love working with volunteers, especially volunteers that are sincerely dedicated to good church music, dedicated to having good attendance, and also that trust, the fact that the musician that has been put in place is competent enough to make good judgment at what makes the group sound good, and also volunteers that are willing, let's say if they do want to work on challenging pieces, we may have to have some sectional rehearsals. We may have to have a few extra rehearsals. We may not be able to, like a professional choir, if you take something like Messiaen's O Sacrum Convivium, a professional choir can sing that in 2 rehearsals with 10 minutes time. But an all-volunteer chorus might take about 3 or 4 rehearsals and about 20-30 minutes on one piece. But if they're dedicated and willing to help allot time and help wisely use time, then volunteer choirs are some of the best you could work with and best you could ask for.